Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project. This is Huck L. Berry. She's the executive producer of the show. This is her program, and she says this is Huck TV, so get it right, Dad. Okay, Huck TV. And she's going to monitor and make sure that I do a good show for you, or she will kick me out of the room and take over herself, snoring, panting, making obnoxious noises, but hopefully she's going to let me stay. Is that right, Huck? Yes, you're a good girl. Oh, yeah, 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 you're a good girl. Yeah, you're a good girl. Oh, yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah. Yeah, you're my buddy, huh? Yes, you're my girl. Yes, you're a good girl. So, we got an interesting show, a little different for you. I might as well tell you now that if you're one of those people that is just looking for missing person stories, move on. This is a wrap-up version of the Dinkey Creek stories. Well, Dave, what do you mean by a wrap-up version? Well, I gave you a lot of stories out of Dinkey Creek. What else could be there that could be propagating these issues that hikers, hunters have ran into? And that's what this is about. So, if you keep your head in the sand and you don't look around, you don't look up, and you don't look down, and you just look straight ahead with tunnel vision, you're going to miss a majority of life that happens all around you. Now, I understand that there's people that, I just can't hear that. It gives me too much anxiety. Well, then move on. I get it. We're going to talk about some things today that have been reported by people just like you that happened in that Dinkey Creek area. The sources I go to for this are many. I'm going to talk to you about a series of UFO sightings from the UFO Reporting Center run by my friend Peter Davenport, who takes the reports. I trust everything he says and everything he does. And then there's a series of Bigfoot sightings up there from a variety of sources. A couple of letters I had, people said that happened to them up there. And that's what we're going to go through. So if you're somebody that hates the letters, just move on. I'm going to save you the time. You don't have to listen. Goodbye. Don't put down there, I hate the letters, because you don't have to watch. If you love the letters, if you love the sighting reports, then hang in there. Hold on to your hat, because here we go. So this was an email that was sent to me just the other day. Hey Dave, I first want to say I'm a big fan. I've been following all of your work the past 4 years. I appreciate everything you do and you share your knowledge and wisdom. I love you, man. You're truly a blessed man, and I hate when people poke at you at various items. Same with Huck. Thank you. I have a few things for you to check out. I first want you to Google Avocado Lake Bigfoot. Oh yeah, I'm interested. Avocado Lake. So down in this area is Fresno. Here's Avocado Lake right here. Balch Camp, which we talked about and had some missing persons reports. And Dinkey Creek, Shaver Lake, the Garnet Fire that's happening now. So now you know. So a story by KMPH News in Fresno County. It's about multiple sightings by multiple ranchers. And an interesting story about a rancher witnessing a Bigfoot running with a wild boar over his shoulder and tripping over an irrigation pipe. Pig flies through the air, Bigfoot gets up, runs, grabs the pig, and continues his run. There are a lot of wild boar in that area and around Pine Flat Lake. If you continue east into the mountains, you will hit Wishon Lake. From there, cut north and end up in Dinkey Creek. I have a couple of stories. I'll get to the Avocado Lake story in a minute. Oh, let's do it now. What the heck? Here's a story. In a recent encounter highlighted on a podcast, a farmer in Fresno County reported witnessing 5 to 6 Bigfoot creatures on his farm during the night. According to the account, one of the Bigfoots was observed carrying a pig over its shoulder. The farmer detailed an incident where the creature tripped over an irrigation pipe, causing the pig to fall. The sighting is not an isolated event, as the farmer noted that other families in the area have reported seeing Bigfoot over the years. Avocado Lake. The encounter took place at Avocado Lake, situated in the Sierra Nevada mountains not far from Fresno. The area is known for its farmland and proximity to natural water sources, which could attract wildlife, including purported Bigfoot activity. The podcast host described the farm setting, suggesting it was likely a fruit farm, which could be indicative of the type of food sources that Bigfoot may eat. The farmer's description of the event suggests a level of familiarity with the creatures, implying that this is not the first time he had encountered them. His observations were shared anonymously as part of a submission to a community of Bigfoot enthusiasts, which encourages members to share their sightings and experiences. The podcast emphasized the community aspect of the reporting, noting that individuals often share these type of encounters in hopes of understanding the phenomena better. The farmer's experience adds to a growing body of anecdotal evidence surrounding Bigfoot sightings in California. The geographical context of Avocado Lake, with its surrounding hills, rivers, farmland, offers potential habitats for Bigfoot. The podcast noted the strategic advantages of such an area for a creature reputed to be elusive. The podcast further discussed the importance of documenting these sightings as it contributes to a larger narrative of Bigfoot. The community encourages those who have similar experiences to come forward and share their stories. Overall, this encounter not only adds to the lore surrounding Bigfoot in California, but also emphasizes the communal effort to document and understand each sighting. The farmer's experience serves as a reminder of the intersection between rural life and the mysteries of the wilderness that still captivate the imagination. At one point, I was living in Santa Cruz, California, on the California coast south of San Francisco. And I got a report, somebody told me, who had an avocado farm outside of Watsonville, California, also on the coast further south. The person said, I've owned this ranch and this farm for 25 years. I've never seen this, Dave. You got to come see it. I go down there, and what I see is like 60 avocado pits on the ground, obviously chewed up, with the outsides of the avocado laying intermittently throughout this whole orchard. It looked like something, a Bigfoot, put it in its mouth, bit down, ate the avocado inside, munched on it a little bit more, kind of rolled it around in its mouth and spit it on the ground. Like 40, 50, 60 times. And I looked around and the ground was so hard I didn't see any tracks. But the guy said that in the last series of nights that they've heard a lot of strange sounds, predominantly Bigfoot sounds. And I thought, wow, this is wild. And I've looked since, and I've never seen another story of a Bigfoot coming into an avocado orchard and eating 40 to 60 avocados. I thought it was interesting. So, there you have the Avocado Lake story. The man goes on, he says, I have a couple stories 1.2 miles south of the bridge at Dinkey Creek on Swamp Lakes Road to Swamp Lakes. In a few miles there is a green gate, signposted road closed to vehicles, but you can walk in. Also, another sign that says deer habitat. My hunting buddy Bob had a bad time Bigfoot encounter in the 1998 during rifle season, but he was using a bow. It took him years to tell me because he was afraid of the ridicule. My buddy walked in with his bow with a friend that had his rifle. They walked in about 1 mile. Bob walked off trail and had a 15-yard stretch between him and his buddy. He walked towards a drop-off to look down for game. He took a look, didn't see anything. He looked forward and he saw a young pine tree about 20 to 30 feet tall and about 20 feet away. As he stood there scanning, he saw a Bigfoot behind the tree with its hands separating the branches looking back at him. As they stared at each other, it spooked my friend because it looked like a man's face, but with dark skin, a huge face, and he could see blinking eyes. That's pretty good. He said the face was 9 to 10 inches high, and I guess the Bigfoot realized he saw him too. The Bigfoot bolted toward the ledge, which was about 8 feet from the tree. He saw it make it to the ledge in 2 steps. He saw it 9 to 10 feet tall, reddish brown, 4 feet across its shoulder, side view of a head leaning back from the forehead. Crazy thing was, when it bolted, it never let go of the tree. It nearly ripped the tree out of the ground, so he pulled it down toward the ledge, and it sprung back and forth, creating a dust cloud from the tree and the dirt. It jumped off the ledge down 6 feet, then ran down the side of the hill. My buddy said it sounded like a freight train going through the trees and the shrubbery. My buddy has gone into this area on previous occasions, and he felt like something was always watching him. He had a dried pine cone about 8 inches long thrown at an angle over his head, and then realized there were no trees over his head. He said it sounded like it flew through the air like it was shot over his head. He said it was dust, and it spooked him, so he hightailed it out of there. It wasn't until he had the visual encounter that it all made sense to him. David, you have kept us safe. My buddy told me about you. I learned about the Yosemite cluster and now the Dinkey Creek cluster. We hunt in a team, mainly road hunting now when we avoid the granite. We also hunt above Bass Lake and Beeshore Road where Sandra Hughes went missing. I wanted to search for her, but my buddy won't go, and I won't go alone. Smart man. I know this is a long message. Sorry for that. I pray blessings of protection over you and keep you safe. You're under spiritual attack, but remember this. You are God, little children, and have overcome them, because he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. Thank you. Let me talk a bit about Phenomenon for a second. People come up, tell me stories all the time. And they know I'm a safe place to tell a story to, because I'm not going to ridicule them, make fun of them, etc. And I hear some pretty outlandish things. And friends, I can't tell you the number of times they tell me a story where there's a Bigfoot and there's a UFO in the same proximity to each other. Or people told me about seeing a portal open up. I heard all kinds of things. And that area of Utah in Uinta County has tons of strange things happening besides Skinwalker Ranch. So I appreciate you guys talking to me, sending me the stories. I read every one. So thanks. So we talked about Huntington Lake, but let me remind you where that is. So here's Dinkey Creek right here. Here's Shaver Lake. Huntington Lake is just the next lake right up here. Close. You can follow Highway 168 all the way up to it. It's a pretty lake. Good fishing. This report came in 2001. Kaiser Pass, east side of Sample Meadow. The nearest location was Huntington Lake. That's what the report says. I was hunting at Sample Meadow above Huntington Lake. I was hunting. Another hunter story. I just walked through a marshy area and had gotten into some dense pine trees when I spooked two deer up, and I got a glimpse of them as they ran through the trees. I stopped and was motionless for a couple of minutes when I heard a loud explosion of air and a branch snapped behind me in the thick pine trees. I'd never heard anything like that before, so I froze and did not move. About a minute later, I heard the same sound from a little further away. And then the next time I heard it, it was closer to the north. This happened about 6 times. Each time it was in a different location, like it was trying to see where I was, and scare me off. The last time I heard it sounded like it was right behind me, and I flinched then, It must have seen me. I heard it running away from me through the trees, making the same noise and breaking limbs that it was running off. I stood in the same spot for about 5 minutes and did not hear it again. I walked out of the woods to my truck where my dad was waiting for me, and we drove about a mile down the road to a campsite to eat lunch. At lunch, I told my dad what happened and described the noises, and he thought it might have been a buck grunting. It sounded good to me since I never heard a buck grunt. So we decided that the buck might come back to this spot. So we ate lunch and drove back to the same spot. By the way, I've never heard that association of a buck grunt with those sounds. We hiked and got to the marshy part I told him about in the direction that the deer ran, and I would try to spook them out again. I waited for him to get out of sight, and then I walked toward the pine trees. I got to the pine trees when I seen 3 does running in my direction toward the grove of trees in front of me. Just before they got to the trees, I heard the same noise again, the expulsion of air and a break branch. It spooked the deer. 2 of them ran downhill, and the last one ran uphill right at me. It stopped within 10 feet, but it never seemed to be so frazzled by what it saw. It stopped slowly, turned around, and tried to see around the tree to what it had spooked it. Stop. You realize deer are wild animals, right? It's hunting season. So you're hunting them. This deer runs to the hunter for safety. Friends, this has happened to me about 5 times out in the woods. The deer running full bore runs right into the middle of camp and stops and just looks at us. So we grab our guns because is a mountain lion chasing this thing? A bear? Bigfoot? I don't know. But the deer hangs around, sometimes for 4, 5, 6 minutes. This one deer hung out for like a couple hours and started eating the grass around camp, but within eyesight of us, knowing that the predator won't come into our camp. It turned around, tried to see around the tree to what it spooked it. It stood there for about a minute, oblivious to me. It then slowly turned around and started to walk right at me. It got within 5 feet of me. Then I flinched my arms so it would see me before it walked into me. It startled it so bad the deer fell down on its side, did a spin on the ground, and jumped up and ran the other way. When I got around the tree and down about 20 yards, I heard that noise again. The deer ran down and to the south, and I saw it stop about 150 yards away through a clearing. It would look back at me, then it would look at where the noise came from. It looked back and forth. Trust me, I believe all this. Several times, then it ran away. I then followed where the deer had ran to see what was making the noise, and I walked very slowly, came around the tree, and about 30 yards down the tree line, I saw a large figure with black hair sitting under a large pine tree, sunning. It had large shoulders, 4 to 6 inches of hair, but you could still see the muscular definition of its chest and shoulders. There was a fallen tree blocking my view below its waistline, but we locked eyes and stared at each other, motionless. It had dark eyes. I could not see any whites of the eyes. I could see the hair on its head blowing slightly in the breeze. I didn't see any facial hair, just a very dark face. After looking at each other for about a minute, I wanted to get closer, but the fallen tree was in my way, so I took a step to my left to go around. When I got out of its sight, I heard it get up and bound through the trees, making the same noise as it ran away from me, the loud expulsion of air, and breaking branches. I went back to the same general area a year later with my 2 kids and found about 4 large footprints in the dirt. You could make out the ridges of fingerprints. It had about a 4-foot gait. The expulsion of air. Not sure I've heard that before. I've heard the opening and clanging of what it sounded like a metal door in an area. Expulsion of air, I'd have to have that explained to me. With the deer running into camp? Oh yes. Apparently it must have been really dark out when that deer ran and didn't see the hunter. Again, above Huntington Lakes in the Sierras, a different report. Nearest town, Fresno. Gentlemen, here's my account of what I remember. Fresno, California, 95. The Mono Creek Campground, about 12 to 14 miles above the Lake Huntington in the Sierras. Myself, fishing partner, and another gentleman were all fishing a small part of the river there. It was last weekend of the season before they closed the roads due to snow. About 3 miles down the river, my partner decided he had enough and stopped to take a nap. This other gentleman and myself pushed on, maybe 3/4 of a mile from where we had left my friend. I stood to fish in a pool. The other guy dropped down to the next pool to fish. This is how we were working on 3 different areas. We would stop and fish a hole, and the other guy would go right down below. That's a good way to do it, because then you kind of keep an eye on each other. That's the way I used to fish with my kids. I noticed this guy coming back up. He looked very excited and was waving for me to come there. I figured that he had landed a giant monster of a fish, or had seen a bear. He was almost in a frenzy. He told me to hurry. When I got caught up to him, he was looking over the edge of the next little drop-off. I looked over and saw nothing unusual. He said it was right there and jumped his way down to the spot. I figured asking him what he had seen. Before I could even get the words out of my mouth, the smell, I can't explain what it was. Wet, moldy, animal musk filled the air. Nothing I've ever smelled like this. My friend then told me that he had seen it again before I could even ask what he had seen. There, standing no more than I would say 25 yards up the hill, was a creature I believed to be a Bigfoot. About 8 feet tall, covered in reddish brown hair and some black hair. The face, I remember it almost looking humanoid in appearance. It then turned and began taking huge strides up the mountain, not running, but covering some serious ground bipedally, not on 4. I tried to follow up, but again, I felt an almost hypnotic sensation come over me. And my partner later told me he felt the same way. Hypnotic sensation. Native Americans say you never look the Bigfoot in the eye because they can hypnotize you and then you're under their control. I've heard this before, this hypnotic sensation. Now, I've read you 2 reports. Did you notice that they said that there was no hair on the face? I think that is very truthful. When people say it had hair all over the face, I really question that. Because in all the sketches that Harvey and I did in the Hoopa Project and Tribal Bigfoot, none of the bipeds had any hair on their face. And the Native Americans said they don't have hair on their face. They look more human. But again, I felt an almost hypnotic sensation take over me. And my partner later told me he felt the same. And I couldn't move. We watched it. Oh, they couldn't move. So they were like frozen in time and space. Obviously by the Bigfoot. You know what else can do that? Aliens. Aliens can make you freeze and you can't move. This is part of the paranormal aspect of a Bigfoot. We watched it go right up over the top and over it. I felt very overwhelmed and did not say anything to my friend. We just walked in silence back to the other friend. He could tell we were shooken up, but never let him in on what had just occurred. To this day, whenever I think about it, I get overwhelmed with emotion. When I got home, I called the gentleman and talked to him about what we had seen. The feelings we went through were basically the same. When he saw the creature, he said he could smell the smell I described, but not nearly as bad as when we came downhill to where it had been standing. Then a strange feeling took over him as well, almost like we were hypnotized or drugged. He has trouble now remembering what they look like. He can remember seeing it and the smell, but all those memories are fading, I can tell you. I will never forget what he looked like, and I have come to my own conclusions. I believe the smell of the Bigfoot emits can be used as a sort of defense system. Let me explain. I believe when excited or scared, the aroma emits can actually work on a person's system. Maybe for one it makes you feel drugged, or for another it makes you feel hypnotized, or just plain scared. The reason I felt that way. I did notice no other animals, no sounds, nothing that day. I'd been saying that a couple miles into our trip downriver, I always make sure to look for wildlife, and there was none. And up there I always see and hear quite a few things. After the sighting, a very tranquil feeling came over me. It was like, it's going to be all right. It's going to be fine. A weird calmness. Whenever I think about it, I cry or become teary-eyed, overwhelmed with emotion. Several people who have encountered Bigfoot are so shocked and overwhelmed they do cry. I've heard that many times. Next one, 1991, June. San Joaquin River. Fresno County. My story occurred in 91 on the San Joaquin River, what would be the northwestern part of town. Actually in Fresno. The area is mostly farmland, some sparse woods and vineyards. Nothing like forestry though. Myself, my cousin, and a friend had decided to go late night fishing at a little area on the river, sort of pools. There's a bridge there. It was late and we were sitting there and fishing when we heard something making noise and looked back and saw a coyote running across the bridge heading north. The coyote kept looking back as it ran, as it was frightened. The coyote looked at us, but it was only clearly focused on something behind it, and it was scared. We thought at the time that that was odd. Then we heard what we thought was a splash, as if something dove into the water behind us. It was dark, so we just glanced back, but of course saw nothing. We probably sat for 10 minutes when there was a huge goosh and splash about 25 yards away from us. We stopped fishing and then tried looking into the darkness. This small boulder throwing continued at least 2 more times before we actually saw a figure there about 40 yards away, standing what looked like waist deep in the river. There was a full moon, so it was dark to see that it was a pretty big creature. By this time we were starting to get scared and were pretty much froze in place and had begun to yell at it, thinking that it could be a person. This prompted my friend to yell threats of violence, as young people are sometimes prone to do. This creature basically turned its whole body to the right of it and grabbed another boulder with both hands over its head and threw it at us. This one landed about 15 yards away. It made no sound and no noise, only threw small boulders. Threw about 2 more boulders, the last landing about 5 yards from us, enough to splash the water on our faces. By this time we had reeled in our lines and were trying to get out of there as fast as we could. We ran all the way back to the car, which was through some trees across a field and up a hill. We went back the next day to the area and on rafts floated to the area where the creature had stood. My friend is about 6 feet tall, jumped into the water to see about how deep it was. The water came up to his shoulders. There was no way this was a man. We even saw some of the boulders he had thrown at us. And it wasn't more than, at the bottom of the water, it wasn't more than 5.5 foot deep. There was a sandbar and the boulders were at least 30 to 40 pounds. I don't think any man has thrown those. Now, we're going to go over to the UFO Reporting Center. Shaver Lake. Remember when I told you that Shaver Lake is extremely close to Dinkey Creek? May 8th, 2021. A long formation of lights across the northern sky, flying straight and evenly spaced, that lasted for several minutes, were seen. We're at our cabin in the mountains getting ready to leave. As we approached our car, we noticed in the northern sky, just above the tree line, a string of lights flying in a straight line west to east, evenly spaced and all going about the normal speed. I would normally think it would be a satellite. Yeah, Elon Musk, Starlink. But there were too many of them. The parade of formation of lights lasted several minutes. I would say at least 3 minutes. They faded and generally disappeared as they headed east. There had to be over 100 lights. Yeah. Elon's, I've seen them, maybe 7, 8, 10. Never that many. I would say at least 3 minutes and faded, gradually disappeared in the east. They had to be over 100. Eventually they stopped, but it was Okay, satellites never stop. Not falling like a meteor or space debris. They were too far away to see any shape or color. Although I am somewhat skeptical of UFOs, I don't disbelieve. This is definitely the first time I ever made a report. So if you ever see anything in the sky and you don't understand, file a report with UFO Reporting Center. They're good people, and they will walk you through what it might be. April 23rd, 2012, Shaver Lake again. Fireball, aura and haze around object. Bright light in the sky. I was out fishing with my family at Shaver Lake for the first time this year. We arrived at the lake at 6 a.m. and approximately between 7 and 7:30, I happened to look up the sky towards the northwest and saw up in the sky something that resembled a falling star. It was cone shape at the front, and the color of the front was a bright white, like that of a bulb. But the shape of the object behind the tip in the front is what puzzled me. The best I can describe it is sort of like the width of how planes leave a trail in the clouds from the wings, that the color would normally be white was instead bright and resembled the color of arc welding torch. Super bright, shiny blue. The object didn't leave a trail like how the trail of a normal plane is when visible after the aircraft has moved on. Instead, with the unknown object, the trails so-called seemed to follow right along each side of the bright white cone-shaped center tip, leaving no residual traces after it moved out of view. I only observed the object for 5 to 7 seconds before it fell out of behind forest trees at the distance. If I had to estimate the distance the object appeared to be from, I stood maybe 1 to 3 miles. I can't be exact. I was sort of stunned and shocked when I looked up and saw the thing in the air and was actually expecting to hear a loud sonic boom or impact, which was descended at a slight angle going downward, but it didn't hear a thing. Being stunned and caught in the moment, I wasn't even able to sum up the wits to shout to my family members who were fishing down a couple yards. There was a good amount of people fishing northwest of where I saw the object, which would be in the position of the unknown object behind the other fishermen. After that incident was over, I looked around to see if anybody else was pointing in the direction of the object from the way as if they looked. We were all focused on fishing while it happened to gaze off just at the right time. I told my families what I had witnessed, but none of them saw it. Just my luck. Friends, I've always said, remember, the common person looks straight ahead, rarely looks to the sides, never looks down, and rarely looks up. They're missing 90% of what's in their view. Shaver Lake again. May 19th, 2024. I am a 24-year-old retired active reserve U.S. Coast Guard chief and a 21-year retired deputy sheriff. This is a good witness, folks. I was sledding with my family, can't remember the exact date, but I'll have my daughter figure it out. I walked up to my 2004 Toyota Tacoma that was parked on the road above a sledding hill. This was just a wide spot in the road that had an accessible road for the area for the kids to play on. I stood at the back of my truck and I looked at the sky over the top of my shell, and I saw a foot-ish diameter, clear, with no defined edge ball. It distorted my view of the clouds and ski in a round shape as it moved from my left to right. Don't remember the direction. The orb made no sound that I remember, and I cannot remember why I looked up. I continued to stare up at the orb until it went out of sight behind trees. From the direction of the orb, it seemed to have come from, I heard, that didn't make sense. From my time in the Coast Guard, I'm pretty good at telling the distance between commercial and military aircraft. I was stationed at Kodiak Air Station. I have over 600 hours underneath aircraft. I was assigned PSU 312, which was based in South San Francisco at the airport. The two jets traveled in the same direction across the sky as the orb. I did not see any aircraft, I only heard them. But I could tell there were two, and pretty sure they were military. Another case. February 16th, 2001, Shaver Lake, Triangle. triangle craft, Shaver Lake, moved very slowly away from us, but then shined very bright light at us. This info is as close as I can remember. Me and my brother-in-law were on a 4-wheel drive trip to the top of Bald Mountain at Shaver Lake. You and I had discussed that exact area on some missing persons cases. Shortly after we arrived at the top of the mountain, my brother-in-law saw something behind me, slightly above our location, slightly above our elevation in the valley between us and the nearest mountain, 1/2 to 3/4 of a mile across. The craft was triangular with 7 red lights across the leading edge. The lights did not flash and were very bright. The object moved very slowly, too slow for any aircraft to stay airborne. I would say the craft was 100 yards across minimum. The most amazing thing was the whole sighting was when my brother-in-law shined a high-powered flashlight at it. It shined a very bright light right back at us. I don't remember what happened after that. The next thing I knew, we had our trip cut short and we're headed home. What? It's like they were abducted and lost time and space. We don't talk about that night anymore, but the last time I mentioned it to him, he asked me if I remember any more about it. Neither one of us can. It's the end of that story. To me, that sounds like a UFO abduction. February 10th, 2003, Shaver Lake. Again, friends, I got to reiterate this. Dinkey Creek, Shaver Lake. Shaver Lake, Dinkey Creek. Very, very close. Extremely large object that appeared to be stalled or hovering above the tree line. The large object appeared to have a row of lights. I was driving down the mountain with my friend just below Shaver Lake from work at about 3:30 in the morning when we came around a bend in the road and observed an extremely large object that appeared to be stalled or hovering above the tree line. At first I thought it was the Goodyear blimp or an airliner, but it was too close to the treetops overhead. The object was motionless. The object appeared to have a row of lights on one side and made a humming sound. There were a number of smaller lights that appeared to be surrounding the object. I have no idea what the object was. My friend and I watched the object for a few minutes and proceeded down the mountain. It's been a number of years since this observation, and I can still picture it in my mind. Wow. I would have sat there all night and watched it. Okay, next case. This one was listed as the Dinkey Lakes Wilderness. Backpacker observes the lights enter into an atmosphere in a high-speed acceleration to the southeast. I was backpacking with my dog during the evening of August 14th, 15th, 2011 in the Dinkey Lakes Wilderness in the western Sierra Nevada mountains of California. It's a relatively benign wilderness for evening travel with a headlamp, and I was enjoying a mosquito-free journey through the lodgepole pine and fir forest with many spectacular meadow-rimmed lakes providing wonderful opportunities to see an occasional shooting star from the Perseid meteor shower. I usually schedule a trip during this period specifically to see the shower. Yet this year the waning gibbous moon eliminated all but the brightest meteorites from visibility. Upon reaching the second Dinkey Lake at approximately 12:25 a.m., I skirted the west side of the lake heading south from the South Lake to the first Dinkey Lake Connector Trail and sat down on the southwest shoreline to take a rest. Looking up in the general direction of the Andromeda constellation, I observed a red and orange flicker of light that appeared to resemble a meteorite vertically enter into our atmosphere. At arm's length, the length of the flicker appeared to be 3/4 of an inch when compared to the width of my thumb. As soon as light faded away, an object white in color accelerated at an incredible rate of speed across the sky in a southeast direction from the exact location of the flicker. I immediately checked my watch. It was 12:30 a.m. Having seen hundreds of satellites cross the sky at fixed rates of speed, This object clearly showed acceleration from the point of origin. This was not a satellite crossing the sky, as it would have seen the approaching heading toward the location of the original flicker. I immediately stood up, called my resting dog, and within 20 feet, we're back into the dense forest of the lake ascent to Island Lake. That review right there took me about 3 hours to put together. Now, I try to make all of my videos about the same length. I could read you triple that number from that area around Dinkey Creek. Active area doesn't even begin to explain it. Now, whether you believe UFOs or Bigfoot have anything to do with what's happening at Dinkey Lake, I get it. I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other. But if you're unwilling to look at the unusual activity in an area, then you're really not interested in doing any kind of research. Because to really understand the complexity of disappearances, you've got to look at everything, folks. Just the facts. Huck's almost asleep. I hope I haven't put you to sleep. Thanks for being here. See you soon. Paulides out.